The tandem of Ighodaro and Collin Gillespie is one of the best in the entire NBA. They do a great job of getting in and out of things and with a certain type of pace and cadence of play. That's exactly what we're here to talk about. Let's dive into the film. All right, as we just kind of get things rolling, we're going to start with looking at the different ways that their tandem, their partnership works within the offense, but also can be a main piece of the offense. So it can work on the periphery, but also work as the first domino to create things rolling for the offense. And on this first possession here, we're going to be watching them kind of from the periphery a little bit. So you get Oso in the corner here. You want to start there. You want to pay attention to where his matchup is. And then you have Collin Gillespie working in three-player action in the middle third of the court here. So they're going Spain pick and roll with a double big lineup with Nick Richards here. And then obviously Oso space to the corner. The Oso space to the corner part, you might be thinking that makes no sense. He can't shoot. You'll see exactly why as the play develops. So you get into your primary action. Nothing there. Lowry Markkanen cheats off of Oso, knowing that he's not necessarily a shooter. So he clogs up the paint to take away the roller. Collin Gillespie acknowledges that, sees that Lowry is off of his matchup, also sees that Oso is just wide open. So why not, when I come off of this pick here, instead of trying to make something out of nothing in this middle third where everything's now muddied and you have four defenders with just three Suns players in the middle third of the court, just kick it to them, and what you've now created is new offense, new advantage, new tempo to play off of. In addition to Ighodaro being wide open, you also have a switch that gets messed up here from the Utah Jazz. As you get Collin Gillespie turning the corner, great job on this screen here, kind of in the midst of it all from Grayson Allen. He hits the big, in addition to Utah just not doing a good job with their guards and switching and things like that. So as Collin makes that pass to the wide open Ighodaro, he can just chase or follow the pass that he made into new advantage. And the matchup that ultimately does try to get back to him is miles away from him in tandem with having to work off of a screen that's set from Oso. So what you've now done as you get the defense rotating back out, everybody's playing catch up. That allows for a closeout for Collin to then attack. He's able to find a shooter on the backside. Wide open three. Very kind of layered, detailed first possession. So I'm going to let this one just run back so you can appreciate the timing and cadence of the reads that they're making with everything that they're doing. It's all in sync. It's all first domino after the next, leads them to an advantage on the backside. Catch and shoot three from one of their best three-point shooters. Royce O'Neal delivers the goods on that one. What we're going to be seeing a lot of in this film session as well is a lot of Ighodaro in the trailer spot in their kind of transition or semi-transition breaks, secondary transition breaks, and then finding ways to create offense off of that. And that's exactly what we see on this next rep here. What I like about this possession is you have an extended pickup point with Stephon Castle and Grayson Allen. So instead of waiting until you get into the half court to actually start running your offense, if they want to start playing defense this high up the court, you can start playing offense that high up the court too. And there's significantly more consequences and repercussions on the back end for the defense to have to extend and defend past the half-court line versus if their pickup points were maybe here or even at the half-court line. And you start extending this far and you're able to create a first trigger for an offense on the other side of half-court, your spacing is as good as it's going to get because you have the defensive shell is going to be extended so much further up the floor that you have just so much more space to operate with. And if you're able to eliminate one defender like you see here with this kind of high IQ screen from Ighodaro before Grayson even gets to the half-court line, you've now created major advantage and you're putting a ton of pressure on the defense. So you have Wembanyama, the best rim protector in the league. It hits a little different when he has to defend with all of this space and a natural advantage that's being created for the Suns as you kind of get into the first couple of seconds of the shot clock. We're only at 19 seconds right now, and you've already gotten a reaction out of the defense. Grayson's essentially created two to the basketball. This is now Oso in the trailer position. And as Grayson realizes that the job is done there, you've gotten a reaction out the defense. You kind of flattened them out a little bit. What you've now naturally created with Oso in that trailer spot is a 2 versus 1. You got Jordan McLaughlin guarding Collin Gillespie, and then you have Ighodaro without anybody guarding him. So you get the pitch to Oso, and because Oso knows that his matchup is this far into the paint, almost into the restricted area, you can now just see him naturally being able to get into this 2 versus 1 with Collin Gillespie. Easy flip through the legs. The flip through the legs is fancy, but more than fancy, it's functional. It's intentional. Collin knows that he can curl off of this because the big is not even in the picture now. All Oso has to do is just kind of lead him there, almost like a handoff to a running back, if you will. And because he's able to get it to him quick, McLaughlin can't navigate and stay attached to the extent that he wants to. Collin gets to settle into an easy mid-range pull-up pocket, and he does what he does. All right, this next one, you get a little bit of transition here, so you get the flip to Collin. Oso again in that trailer spot, and again, if you got Oso in that trailer spot, you got the big back, that means that there's an opportunity to just kind of create, and you see that on the back end of this, in addition to Oso being in the trailer and the big being back. As you get into the rescreen and you see the tempo with the rescreen that it comes with from Oso, he just completely discards of Wagner, and because Wagner is discarded of, that forces Wendell Carter Jr. to kind of shift off of his base just enough. As Collin knows that because of the prowess of him shooting, that lets him know that pocket pass is there, and then Oso's able to get into Ayrton's favorite, the patented Oso kind of floater there. And you get to this next one, and this is the kind of creativity you're going to be seeing. Obviously, Collin just creating on the back end of it, but what I like about this one more than anything is what comes with when you're able to have these two players working in action together. So you get into this wide action, you're going to see Grayson Allen kind of be top locked. They don't want him to necessarily be able to use the wide screen to be able to come off of as a shooter. So he gets bodied up by Holiday. Holiday then kind of rides the hip, and then you get into the 77 double screen situation here. Collin could just come off of this and use it with the live dribble and get into action there. But what's unique about those two, Collin and Oso, being in action together is because you have them involved here, you can get into this handoff game, but add a third player in Grayson Allen there to kind of tug at switches and things like that. So because he's able to pitch that to Oso, it now turns the 77 double drag action into zoom. You get the screen into the handoff dynamic, but you get to do it with a little bit more pace, a little bit more tempo, a little bit more speed instead of just coming off with the live dribble. It also tugs at the switching, and it detaches Collin from Amen Thompson and now puts Aaron Holiday in compromise as he has to now kind of navigate to get to the shooter on the other side of the handoff here from Oso. Collin's not able to get into a shot per se, but what he's able to do is use the leverage of Holiday kind of being late arriving to action into advantage. Creates the contact right here, forces Holiday to attach to him, and then counters with the behind the back dribble into daylight. Oso rolls down, gets the big out of there, and what you've now created is all of this space in the middle third for Collin to explore as he gets into it. Gets into a nice little fade below the free throw line. Good defense from Holiday, but when you get that much tempo and that much space for Collin to operate in, it's almost GG's every time, especially if he's working with Oso Ighodaro. One of the fun actions that the Suns got into a lot was that little flare. Draymond doesn't fall for it, but what he does end up falling for in the back end is a great Gortat screen from Oso Ighodaro for Collin Gillespie. And as we let this one roll through a little bit more, love the little kind of slot elbow middle flash here. You get the backside running this baseline to open up all of this space for the potential flare that they're trying to get to. Like I said, they're tugging at the opposing big. Draymond's way too smart. He sniffs it out, so he doesn't fall for it. He doesn't shift, which would then naturally allow for a kind of a cut down the middle of the floor for Oso if he did react. Obviously, Draymond doesn't. Very smart on his half. But what he does end up having to react to, as you see Pod's kind of overreacting and then ultimately doing what he does best and flopping on the screen. You get just enough of space for Collin to then get downhill. He's able to snake that. As he snakes it, you now also have created this opportunity for leverage. Also creating the advantage for Collin. Collin making sure he snakes and navigates the space. As he does that, you see the Gortat screen be set. Also just kind of getting in the way of Draymond. Draymond now can't put pressure on Collin as he gets downhill. And then you have this natural inside hand finish opportunity for Collin. That's just too tough of action to try to guard and navigate when they're getting into it with that type of tempo and that type of pace. All right, we get another one where you see Oso kind of trailing. And as he trails, you kind of see the natural opportunity and the speed at which everything is happening. You want to just make sure you really appreciate that because you get this pitch from Collin, trying to let Bouye have an opportunity to attack. Doesn't necessarily find an opportunity to get all the way to the basket, but what he does do is allow for Oso to now get the ball where Trace Jackson Davis is on trying to stay below the free throw line. Doesn't really want to come up too far up the floor. Because he doesn't want to come too far up the floor, that now allows for Oso to get into this kind of 2 versus 1 again. As you see Collin come off, he gets the handoff, His matchup decides to navigate over the screen. The over immediately means that the big is going to be having to get to the level, not allowing for Collin to get around the corner. But because all of that action is happening, now you essentially have 2 to the ball for Collin. If he gets off it quick, the pocket pass is there. And this is like a handoff in a relay, and you getting it to your anchor, and Oso's able to get downhill, undeterred by any tags or anything, and he puts down a monstrous finish that gets Dylan Brooks off the bench. Seeing him do what he likes to see from Oso there. It gets a little bit more or less off the ball dynamic with those two. You get a pick and roll in the middle third. You get Oso in the corner. His big's going to help off of him, and that naturally allows for that kind of uphill dribble handoff. Different type of scenario in a secondary capacity, but you're still getting to those two being in action together, and that's exactly what we see here. So you get the Royce O'Neal and Rasheer Fleming pick and roll in the middle third, 15 seconds on the shot clock. You get a little bit of reaction to get a switch, and because of the switch and the leverage here that Rasheer now has getting downhill, that kind of puts Oso's matchup in compromise. He wants to make sure that the pass downhill isn't going to be there, but what he ends up conceding on this middle flash here to Oso Ighodaro is the natural 2 versus 1 like we talked about a little bit earlier. So you got 2 Suns players navigating versus just 1 New Orleans Pelicans defender, and all of this space here on the outer third. As Oso gets the ball here on the catch, great pass and timing from Royce O'Neal. You now get the uphill dynamic, the kind of grenade action, if you will. It's not even a handoff this time. It's just a flip to Collin Gillespie, and this is essentially a catch and shoot with a certain type of rhythm created for one of your best three-point shooters. Gets great separation getting into the shot, and as Gillespie gets into it, you already know that's going in. Great speed, great tempo, great cadence, great timing from all parties existing on that rep, and they're able to get up an easy finish. Got another one where Oso's trailing here. A little bit of a handoff there. There's nothing there, but what is ultimately going to be there is Collin just knowing how to work off of Oso. So this is obviously not scripted. These are guys just making reads. You get Gillespie on the backside. You get Goody just kind of reading things. Goody realizes that the matchup is there with Oso, so he just flips the little pitch to him. Sees if he wants to get downhill. His matchup, Eve Missy, is just kind of sitting in the paint, so that means that the drive is not necessarily going to be there. You don't want to have to meet force with force. You can create new advantage, and this is now where it comes into play where Collin and Oso's synergy is just there. Collin's on the complete other side of the floor. He started over there. Sees that Oso gets the ball. There's nothing really there. Knows that he can always just kind of run in a curved angle fashion and just kind of run off of the hip of Oso, and they can create new offense. That route and that distance created and then ultimately kind of chopped down makes it entirely too far for Jose Alvarado to be able to try to meet and navigate under, knowing that Collin can just be a catch and shoot guy coming off of this handoff or going over, and that ultimately putting compromise on Missy having to step up and ultimately creating a late switch situation or conceding the short roll. So you can kind of at this still frame see that there's multiple options. Collin could come off of this and shoot a catch and shoot 3. If Missy steps up, he can obviously hit Oso on this kind of roll here, or if he gets 2 to the ball, he can kind of hit Oso on the short roll and they can play into the numbers advantage on the back end. Multiple options on the board here. I'll pause it here for a second for you to see what he might do, what options might be on the board. And now we're going to look at what he's actually going to do. So you navigate the late switch, force that to happen, and now you get Jose Alvarado essentially in no man's land, and tandem with Oso being available on the short roll. And if you see this type of catch, you know there's a monstrous finish coming on the backside of that, and then that's exactly what we're going to see here. Another monstrous two-hand dunk from Oso Ighodaro in the paint. That tempo, that speed, that cadence at which they're able to find each other is truly a weapon in the Suns' offense. Another Oso in a trailing situation that's met with a guard trying to get under that screen with Collin Gillespie. You're never going to be in advantage defense if you try to go under with Collin Gillespie. We see them just get into that real quick off of the trailer, and Oso, he knocks down that 3. It's another one of those situations where you get them just kind of working in two-man action, and they're ultimately able to string out both bigs into action together, and then you end up seeing them just kind of navigating against bigs and other defenders trying to navigate under screen. So what's important about this rep as we get into the details a little bit, you get Ryan Dunn being guarded by Isaiah Stewart. So he just kind of runs, just kind of shallow cuts into the screening action. And what he does ultimately end up doing, because there's contact on Cade Cunningham, forcing a switch. Cade Cunningham's initially guarding, obviously, Collin Gillespie here. Because of the contact on Ryan Dunn's kind of shallow cut, that forces Isaiah Stewart in this kind of short quarters to have to switch on to Collin Gillespie. So now what the Suns have done is, because of that cut from Ryan Dunn, they put X4, the opposing four-man, in Isaiah Stewart, and X5, the opposing big, in Jalen Duren, both in primary action without a guard in space to be able to kind of undo those switches that took place. This is exactly where the Suns want them to be. Navigate that screen, you get an initial under. Collin's going to poke at it a little bit more just to make sure they have to fully commit to it. And now that he's gotten both bigs, X4 and X5, to commit to it, the quick pitch back to Oso now allows for them to play into that chase or that hand back or that get or follow action, where Collin just pitches it and then chases off of the pass that he sent to receive it back. You get another under. You're never going to be able to live with those in the sense of being successful defensively, because they do all of that with a certain type of tempo and pace. Good luck with that. There you have it. Now you see why that duo, that tandem, operates so well in conjunction with one another. They can operate in a primary sense together, where actions are being run directly for those two to be involved. They can operate on the periphery in a secondary sense, or they can do so in the most unscripted manner in transition, where Oso's the trailer, Collin's bringing it up the floor and doesn't see much development advantage-wise, so he just hits Oso, sees that his big is back and that they're able to play off of each other in different capacities there. There's a whole different layer that we didn't touch on in terms of those two working in pick and roll together, where Oso's the handler and Collin's the screener. Maybe that's a hint at another film session to come, but I think you can glean from what we did talk about just how important and how kind of synergistic those two are in actions together. The detail and the skill and the process in that which Oso is operating in these many different contexts of play he gets into with Collin, it's not just by happenstance. It's not just them figuring it out on the fly. There's a lot of detail that they work through on film, as well as obviously studying each other's patterns in game to make it work to the extent that it does. That's why they're so good together. That's why they've been the Suns' best two-player tandem over the last season, and that's why they are generally one of the better two-player tandems across the entire NBA.